What's that? Good morning, everyone. My name is Steve Aguilar, and I am the head of compensation and benefits for Pandora. And what I'll do today is I'll walk you through what our current candidates are seeing in terms of the rewards that other companies are currently offering. I'll walk you through a very simplistic model that it's a very simple but it's a very powerful model on how leaders inspire action within employees, and then I'll connect the two, how our rewards can be purpose-driven and thus reinforce the culture within the organization. Ultimately, what I want you to take away from this presentation is really just a different way of looking at the rewards that you offer your employees. What you'll find is if you make this connection between the purpose-driven organization, the rewards that you're offering, and then reinforcing the culture, it's a very powerful way to differentiate yourself within your organization. So what I want to start off with is just kind of giving you a broad overview on the type of rewards that are being offered across some of the Bay Area companies here. And so if you're a candidate currently looking for a job and you have the unique skills that these high-tech Bay Area companies are looking for, you hit the jackpot. This is incredible, the amount of fierce competition that's out there. You heard Pat from LinkedIn earlier talk about how benefits is a differentiator, and we're seeing this across the board. I pulled out an infographic from online, and you can see this was an attempt to kind of capture the benefits, or actually these are just perks that these companies are offering within the Bay Area. I wasn't able to capture everything within the infographic. You can see it's cut in about half, and we're talking about a handful of companies here. You'll see everything from massages to gym memberships to haircuts to car washes. And these are just perks. We're not talking about the top of the line medical and dental benefits that these companies are offering. And don't even get me started on the compensation offerings that they're offering as well. That is incredible. But as you think about this, how are you supposed to compete with these companies? If you offer the same benefits, how do you differentiate yourself? And if you're like Pandora, you don't have the resources to be able to compete with this. And so how do you differentiate yourself and really try and get that talent in? So that's hopefully what I'll be able to address today. But first, before we talk about the specific resources and rewards that Pandora is offering, I like to bring up this concept about the golden circle. And so has anybody heard about this? This is research by Simon Sinek. Yeah, a couple of you. I highly recommend, if you haven't seen this, it's pretty informative. It's very inspiring. Simon Sinek did a TED Talk on this several years ago, and I think it's definitely related to what we're talking about today in terms of the rewards that we're offering to candidates and also employees. And the golden circle is a model and a concept of how leaders and organizations inspire employees and how they can call them to action. And so there's three components as part of the golden circle. So he starts off with the what, which is the easiest way of explaining what you do. Any organization, any person within the organization knows what they're doing. This is the clearest. Some organizations know how they do it. And so what he means by the how is this is your differentiating value proposition. It is your intellectual property. It's your secret sauce. It's how you are different than anybody else. But he argues that very few people know why they do what they do. And what he means by this is, what's the purpose of your organization? Why are you there? Why do you get up in the morning, and why should anybody care of what you're doing? So this is it's a very interesting concept on how to think about approaching problems. And what he says is, he says that most people think from the outside in. They think about the what first, because it's the clearest, and then move towards the center because it's not as clear, it's much fuzzier. He says that regardless of the industry, regardless of the size of your organization, what you'll find is inspiring leaders, inspiring organizations actually work from the inside out. They start with the purpose. Why are they there? And then work on how and what they offer ultimately to their employees, their customers, how they market out. And so he provides a really good example. I think it's a very simple one, but it's very clear. And so he uses Apple as an example. And he says, a normal marketing company from a computer company would go something like this. We make great computers. Our computers are easy to use, and they're elegant in their design. Want to buy one? It's not very inspiring. They start with the what and move into some of the how and never really get to the why. Whereas Apple actually works from the inside out. So Apple's marketing message would work something like this. They would say, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. Our products are elegant and simple to use. It just so happens that we make computers. Want to buy one? And so it's a much different message when you're looking at it from the middle out, as opposed to just being very logical about your offerings. And Simon says that the way that he encapsulates this entire idea is, he says that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And that's what makes an inspirational leader. And I think that the same concept can be applied with the rewards that we offer our employees. It's starting with the why. Why are you offering this to them? And so you want to really start with the purpose of the company. It's why does Pandora exist? Why does Facebook exist? Why does LinkedIn exist? And then you want to connect the rewards that you're offering to them. Why are you offering this specific benefit? And ultimately, what that does is it connects the two. It connects your purpose of your company and the purpose of your rewards, and then that drives your culture and reinforces that culture with everybody that you're bringing into the organization. And so, you know, it's a little bit, we're thinking very theoretical at this point, and so what I'd like to do is kind of take you through some examples of how Pandora does this to kind of make that connection between the two. And before I actually jump into the specific examples, I'd like to give you a little bit of background about Pandora, just so for those of you who may not be familiar with them. We are an Oakland-based company. We are a personalized radio music company. We've been around for about 14 years. We're about 1,300 employees. The person on the screen here is Tim Westergren. He is the founder of the company. Took the company public 2.5 years ago, still a very active leader within the organization. Still goes around and does speeches about Pandora, why it's important, and what the purpose of the company was. And his vision for the company was really to kind of change the way that people consume music and really change the way that, that the music industry works. He himself is a musician, and he found that it was really feast or famine out there. You were either made it big or you didn't make a dime. And so he wanted to create a middle class for musicians to really support them in everything that they do. And so he started the company very purpose-driven. He said, this is what we do, here's why we exist. And so that continues to this day. And so let's translate some of that into practice. And I'll use some of Tim's examples because he very much still speaks about some of this and why we do what we do. So like I mentioned before, we're an Oakland-based company. We're in a high-rise building, so we don't have a campus like some of the other companies out there. We are 4 floors of a 20-story high-rise building. So you know, there's some logistical issues that we run into. And Tim tells this great story about why we're based in Oakland. He started in Oakland in 2000. He had the ability to basically start wherever he wanted. He looked in the city, he looked in some of the surrounding areas. And what he found is that Oakland offered him the best flexibility, and just he really appreciated the culture and the vibe of Oakland. And this was a very strategic move, and he didn't even know that this was happening. Early on in the company, they ran into some financial turmoil, and if he was based in the city, what he says, and he still says this today, if he was based in the city, the company would have been kicked out of their spot immediately once he couldn't pay the rent. The day he couldn't pay rent was the day that Pandora would have been dead. He said, but Oakland offered them a lot more flexibility. You know, there wasn't so much competition here. There weren't a lot of other companies trying to move into the area, so they were able to work with them and allow the company to sustain and survive and eventually thrive into the spot they are today. So he feels very loyal to Oakland, and he wants to continue to support them as Oakland continues to grow. So one of the things that Pandora doesn't offer is we don't offer our employees meals. We don't offer breakfast, we don't offer lunch, and we don't offer dinner. And that's very purpose-driven. That's by design. We feel that we want to give back to the community, and we want to support our local community. So by doing that, by offering meals, what we do is we keep people within Pandora. And we don't want that. We want them to go out, and we want them to really support the local community and help a lot of the restaurants, local restaurants, thrive. And so that's one example of how purpose-driven rewards can really support what the culture that you're trying to build internally. Another thing that we say is really, really important is work-life balance. And a lot of companies say that, and you know, everybody means it. But what Pandora does is we convert that into action. And so an example of that would be very similar to the meal example that I just gave you. We don't serve dinner, and there's a reason for that. We tell our employees, you shouldn't be having dinner at work, you should be having dinner with your families. We don't want to encourage or incentivize people for staying at work. And so we encourage them to go home and to have dinner with their families and to live their life outside of work. So those are a couple of different examples of how that purpose-driven is really nailed home and trying to build within the culture that we're reinforcing internally. But it doesn't all have to be negative, right? What I'm talking about here are takeaways that some of the other companies offer that we don't offer. We've chosen to really focus our attention in certain areas. So giving back is really important to us, giving back to our community of Oakland and the surrounding areas. And so what the company has done is they've invested 40 hours of volunteer time for every employee to use a year. And so what that equates to is $2 million worth of salaries for employees to use just on volunteer time. And so for a resource-constrained company like Pandora, this is a huge investment. But we think that it's really important for us as a company to give back to the community that's helped support us and get us to where we are today. So I think that there is those are some really, really just clear connections that we've made between the culture that we're trying to build and the benefits that we're offering, or the perks or the rewards that we're offering to people. I would mention, I did put in a bullet on the workforce, is understanding your workforce demographics, right? So we have scarce resources, and we need to move those resources into specific areas. And what you'll see is, majority of our workforce is under 34 years old. We just have a very, very young workforce. And so what we've chosen to do is to really focus that attention on areas that they really care about, right? So a lot of them are just getting married, starting families. So our maternity benefits are incredibly competitive with some of our neighboring companies. But you'll see that there are certain areas, so that would be ultra competitive, but there are other areas where we may not be competitive. And we're okay with that. And we communicate to employees why we provide them the benefits that we do, how it connects back to the purpose of the company, and we're very transparent. And we're not only just transparent to internal employees, but we're also transparent to candidates as well. We want them to know what they're getting into when they come into the company. And so that way they're not surprised or caught off guard that they're not giving these slew of benefits or perks that other companies are offering. And I think that what ultimately that translates to is it further reinforces the culture that we're trying to drive internally. And so I'll go back to this slide, and I'll kind of sum this up, because there's been a lot of talk about culture. There's been a lot of talk about engagement surveys. And so what I would say with this is it working? And what we found is, we have fairly low turnover for our organization. But we just finished up our engagement survey. We do this survey once a year. And I think some of the answers or some of the results were actually pretty telling. So we had 90% of our workforce actually take the survey. So right off the bat, we have high engagement in people actually taking the survey. And there's two key questions that we use in order to gauge engagement for employees. One of the questions is, I love working for Pandora. the other question is, I would recommend Pandora to my friends and family to work at Pandora. And what we found is that 94% of people said that they would recommend the company to their friends to work at Pandora. Probably much more telling is, I love working at Pandora received 99% favorable scores and 1% neutral. And so this is coming from a company that is resource constrained. We don't offer half of the perks of some of the other companies. And I think it isn't necessarily because of the rewards that we offer, but it's because of how we communicate the purpose of Pandora to the people that are coming through the door. If you're there for, your reward compensation, your perks, is probably not the place for you. And so this is kind of a screening process for us to bring in the people that are going to fit in well into our culture and continue to drive us forward. So, all right, thank you.